All right, we are live. I am Matt Lewis. He is Charlie Sykes. Together, we are Sykes and Lewis. Charlie, how are you?
Good. Hey, happy Tuesday morning.
Happy Tuesday morning to you.
I know what I want to talk about. But let's go with what you want to talk about. It's one of those days where I feel that the topic gods have just been incredibly munificent and
I
generous
have
to.
I've done preparation, unlike our last episode, so I've got
Yeah.
lots
Oh, I'm
to talk
warning you.
about. But I guess we should. You know what we should probably do, Charlie, is just start because today is the second anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel, October 7th, 2023, and just maybe talk about that. Obviously, a horrific, tragic. I don't even know if that's the right word. Horrific day, but a lot of stuff has happened since then. So, um, where are we today, Charlie Sykes? And what are your thoughts on commemorating this day?
Well, first of all, I think it is stunning where we are today compared to where we were uh, on the original October 10th. Look, that was Israel's 9/11. It was a horrific attack by Hamas, which is really one of the axis of evil in the modern world. It was vicious. It was sadistic. The rapes, the murders, the taking of the hostages. And I have to say that I have been a supporter of Israel as long as I can remember. I mean, we're talking about more than half a century that I have been a strong supporter of Israel. So we wake up today and one of the most remarkable things is how much goodwill Benjamin Netanyahu has squandered. I think the military response was completely justified in the beginning. I was completely supportive of it, very, very critical of the anti-Israeli pro-Hamas, demonstrations that were out there. And I know people get pushback on pro-Hamas. Some of it was. Um, and yet, you look back on it, the death toll, the scope of destruction and the fact that now you have so many American Jews who believe that Israel engaged in war crimes, whether you want to use the word genocide or not. So you've had decades and decades of world support and American Jewish support for the Israeli state. And that's been squandered in the last 2 years, which is such a tragedy because you go back to the original October 7th and the entire world rallied around Israel. Your take?
Well, I think, unfortunately, though, part of the problem, Charlie, is that it's predictable that the entire world is going to rally around you when you are the victim and victimized in the horrific fashion they were. And it's also probably predictable that as you engage in a long struggle to get your hostages returned, get even, whatever your game is, that there's going to be attrition. I think as someone like you, Charlie, who is an Israel supporter and kind of grew up. I mean, I grew up. I'm not quite in Ted Cruz territory. Ted Cruz said he got elected to the Senate primarily to be a voice for Israel. I mean, I'm barely paraphrasing. It was effectively that. I'm not quite that hardcore, but I grew up in a Christian evangelical conservative family, and was taught very much that Israel is the chosen people of God. And so whether it's political or theological, I've always been pro-Israel. I will say this, though, Charlie. I do think in the last 2 years, something else has happened that I think if you're a supporter of Israel, you should be concerned about. And that
Dude.
is that Donald Trump and Netanyahu together, I think, have made Israel in America, they're perceived as a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republican Party, that they are one and the
MAGA.
same. And I think it is bad news for Israel that now it's perceived that like they are the Republican team. They used to be America's team,
It
broadly
was
speaking,
it was
mainstream.
bipartisan, right?
Yeah.
It was bipartisan, and so the damage is going to be generational. Sometimes we talk about who's winning or losing in this news cycle. I think the damage to Israel is going to be generational, and I think you see it in the polls. And I think that it is a geopolitical tragedy. And for me to be saying this, all of these years is stunning. And again, I believe in Israel's right to exist. I believe that Israel has the right of self-defense. I supported their military attack on Hamas. I think the world would be better off if Hamas was wiped off the face of the earth. But when you're talking about this kind of a disproportionate amount of killing, the amount of human suffering, it's breathtaking.
It'll be interesting to see. And, I'm a huge Donald Trump critic, and I think deservedly so. But he's done some things occasionally that are good, and it will be interesting to see if this plan he has for peace in the Middle East will
on.
pan out. I mean, what it sounds like you're skeptical that this is going to work, Charlie.
Oh, I think that's fair. No, it's going to be skeptical. Look, Netanyahu's going to play him again. Then and Donald Trump is too mercurial, let's just play out. So it would be great if you would have a cessation of hostilities. It would be wonderful if we got the hostages back. But that 20-point plan, this is just not it's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. But let's wait and see what happens because Netanyahu
Yeah.
does not want to make this deal. Netanyahu does not want the war to end. I mean, and that's something that we need to kind of just get our heads around because, that's why I think Netanyahu is going to be remembered as a monster. I mean, Hamas is like the original monster, but Netanyahu, the damage Netanyahu's done
Yeah.
is, and no, I don't have any confidence that Donald
Well,
Trump, look, Donald Trump wants to win more than he wants to actually solve the problem. He wants the fucking Nobel Peace Prize. He's not going to get the fucking Nobel Peace Prize. And I don't think this is going to work. That's just me.
Well, I don't know if you saw this clip, but there's a clip of Netanyahu was asked, are you concerned that you're losing American public support? And he talked about, well, there's the woke left and now there's the woke right, basically saying anybody on the right who's not pro-Israel is a Nazi. I'm sure there's some overlap, but the Venn diagram isn't, complete. But the other thing he said was there was this like, how are we going to fix this problem of losing American support? And he seemed to suggest, Charlie, that it would be done via the new ownership of TikTok and by reaching out to Elon Musk and effectively changing the algorithm. He didn't expand on that, but you could see where this might lead. Not in good places.
He is not he's not playing the long game. I mean, real leaders play a long game, and tragically, Netanyahu has put all of his chips behind Donald Trump, and we know where that goes. Was it Rick Wilson who said everything Trump touches dies?
Yeah.
Everything
By the,
Trump touches turns to shit. I mean, just remember that lesson. It will help guide us through the various events. And there are
and
so
by the way,
many.
let me say, Charlie, I'm going to try at the end to take questions. I don't know. This is going to be an experiment to see if we can do it in real time on the app. I'm going to try at the end. So if you have questions, sort of save them till the end, and we'll do what we can. I'll probably try to read them off and have Charlie answer first. But we got Chicago to talk about. We've got Bad Bunny to talk about. We've got
No.
Barry Weiss to talk about. We've got Marjorie Taylor Greene. Charlie, where do you want to start?
I want to start with the Insurrection Act because I want to clarify things for people out there who might be in some doubt about this. And I'm actually writing my newsletter for today, which will come out
Yeah.
shortly after this. By the way, this is what I'm sorry. This is what the drafts look like when we're doing it. And
Nice.
my tentative headline is yes, Trump will invoke the Insurrection Act. And I'll probably change it to like, of course he's
Yeah.
going to.
Let me just read here.
People should not be surprised by this. It is coming. It's absolutely going to
Yeah.
happen.
In an appearance in the Oval Office, Trump was asked under what circumstances he would exercise those emergency powers. He replied that, quote, "We have an Insurrection Act for a reason, and I'd do it if it were necessary. But so far, it hasn't been necessary." He laid out a set of conditions that he said could justify invoking the act, including, quote, "if people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or mayors or governors were holding us up."
Sure, I would do that. Okay, that's what he said. What he means is, yes, he's been itching to do this for years. We've been warning about this for years. I'm going to be quoting from an old David French column. He wrote this a couple of years ago, and he described it as the most dangerous law on the books. The Insurrection Act was the most dangerous law. It gives the president staggering power, staggering power. Law enforcement authority for troops. It overrides posse comitatus. No government consent is needed. A much broader scope. So people need to understand this. And I guess the reason I wanted to emphasize this is, look, there's a couple of things that Trump has done and will do that shock people. that should not surprise anyone. This is something that has been out there for a very, very long time. All of what's been happening now has been a predicate for invoking the Insurrection Act. It is a pretext. And I did something yesterday, Matt, for my sins. I spent a couple of hours going through Stephen Miller's social media feed.
Uh-oh. That is
The face of evil.
you must have had nightmares. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I'm hoping that I'll write a piece like "The World According to Stephen Miller," because if you see the world through Stephen Miller's eyes, you'll also know what Donald Trump is seeing and hearing. And Stephen Miller is painting this picture of absolute dystopia, of violence, of attacks on ICE agents, on cops. This the narrative of terrorism and insurrection. He keeps bringing up the word insurrection over and over and over. He's laid it out about as explicitly as you can. Here's one of his bleats where I think he basically gives you a roadmap of what's going to happen. The issue before us now is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left wing terrorism in this country. It is well organized and funded, and it is shielded by far left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorney generals. By the way, some of the judges appointed by Donald Trump. The
Hmm.
only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks. Well,
Mm,
and
mm.
we're talking about the Insurrection Act. That's what he wants. That's what they're planning. That's what they're going to do.
I get that Stephen Miller is the brains of this, that he is sort of the evil genius, and like Russ Vogt is, there's a small group of kind of evil geniuses that are driving this. I guess my question is, do you believe that Trump is sort of a dupe in the sense that like he is in this information bubble and he truly believes that things are that bad in Portland, that things are that bad in Chicago, or are they just influential? But Trump is not, is not a patsy here.
No, no, Trump's not a dupe. He knows what he's doing. I mean, look, Donald Trump has been telling us what he wants to do for years, over and over and over again. He crafts the reality he wants. See, I mean, you kind of get inside of Donald Trump's mind. Does he believe it? Does he not believe it? Well, look, this is his bespoke reality. He will shape reality. He will, shape the past. He will rewrite history. And in his view, if you listen to him, we are a nation under attack. We are a nation that is being invaded. We are a nation at war within. We are a nation that is threatened by terrorism, and he alone can keep it safe. And there is his evil homunculus on his ear telling him what he must do. And if the judges tell him, I'm sorry, you're the president, not a king, we have a constitution, you can't do this, you got the evil homunculus saying, ignore the judges, they are radical left wing judges. How do you get around this? Invoke the Insurrection Act.
Mm,
He's going to do it.
yeah. Well, the reason I ask is, I mean, I think there's obviously there's truth to the fact that people who sit around watching Fox News all day probably really do believe that Portland is a hellhole, that Washington, D.C. is just being invaded. I mean,
Yeah, they
if
do.
all I believed was what I watched on Fox News, I wouldn't never set foot in Washington, D.C. I'd be too afraid to, right? And
Yeah.
it's obviously a joke. And I think there's Ben Smith suggested that maybe Trump is a victim to some degree of this information bubble,
Bullshit.
but I think he surrounds himself with people who confirm what he wants to believe. Let me ask you this, Charlie. I don't know if you have a take on this. I don't have a take. I'm so curious. Stephen Miller is a Jewish kid
Yeah.
from Santa Monica. Okay. So apparently he grew up with a family that had escaped the Holocaust who literally talked about it, about how blessed they were to get to come to America and how you can never forget. This is according to his relatives, like his uncle, his cousin. And he also went to like Santa Monica High School or something, which this isn't like the Rust Belt or how does he turn? How does he become the face of evil coming from that background?
Okay, first of all, the phrase face of evil was that his cousin, right? His own cousin. Remember his
Is that
family
where? Yeah, I think that's
who
where
did.
it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, and wrote a long Facebook post describing it as the face of evil. Now, my first reaction was okay. And then I thought, okay, if there is a face of evil, what would it look like? And I have to tell you, it would look very much like Stephen Miller. because there is evil. See, I happen to believe there is evil in the world, and there are people who are perpetrators of evil and who are advocates of evil. And I think that he is one. Now, you ask a very complicated question. How did he get so bent? How did he get so twisted? How did this Jewish kid from California end up sounding like Joseph Goebbels? And I don't
Looking
mean that in
too,
a snarky,
looking mannerisms. I mean,
and the speech and the it is, I mean, who knows what trauma he experienced as a child. Would it surprise you to learn that he was probably bullied as a child, that he's got resentments and hatreds? I mean, what the thing about Trump and Miller is these are two men with deep insecurities and hatreds and resentments, and they are now in a position to, you know, finish the business, take care of all the people who looked down on them, who didn't respect them, who insulted them, who went after them. And so this culture of revenge and violence is deeply ingrained. And this is why they bond. This idea that Trump is somehow a dupe is the purest bullshit because the fact that he has chosen Stephen Miller as
yeah,
the voice that he wants to hear first thing in the morning and last thing at night. I mean, that just didn't just happen. Nobody duped him into having Stephen Miller. This is Donald Trump's id. He wants that voice telling him, go on, do it. They hate you. We hate them. They hit you. Let's hit them back 10 times harder. That's what's going on here. But I don't know. What's your theory on how he became this twisted,
I
neo-Nazi
don't.
homunculus? Yeah.
I don't. But I wonder if is it as simple as evil? Are some people just evil? Um,
Well,
I don't
evil
want
is
to
not
say like
simple.
demonic possession, but like, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Let me ask you this, Charlie, because I want to talk about this Insurrection Act, right? So on one hand, this could just be the fundamental flaw with liberal democracy is that it makes perfect sense to me that like in a time of legitimate emergency or crisis, you
Yes.
might need to do extraordinary things, suspend habeas
Right.
corpus like Abraham Lincoln did, right?
Yes.
And to preserve the country. The survival of the country could demand that. And yet, by virtue of having that, break glass in case of emergency, ability, function available, it allows the president to define and decide when to break the glass. And that's just a
Alone.
fundamental vulnerability, I think, that we have, because then once you get a, Caesarist and power, they can do it. So I think there's two possibilities right now. One is that because I think you're right, he's gonna do this. He's gonna invoke the Insurrection Act. One possibility, this would be bad, but not catastrophic. But it would be bad if he did it because he's a tough law and order type who's sort of a dirty Harry type, and he plays by his own rules, and he doesn't believe in, niceties and technicalities, and he's going to just unleash the law enforcement to clean up the streets. That would be bad.
That's what it's
That would
like.
be bad. But then there's a second option, Charlie, which is my real fear, and that this is a trial run. That everything he's doing is in service of a larger plan, which would be when he loses. Well, if he, and rather than I don't know if he's going to run again or whatever, but like rather than turning over power to his successor, that there would be an emergency that would be cited to stay in power. And look, we're just 9 months in. He's already doing the stuff now, Charlie. He would have over 3 years to get us to the point where I would sound less crazy, like I have less TDS than what I'm describing right now.
So a few months ago, I would have thought that was, oh, come on, that's not going to happen. We need to think about that. We need to exercise our imagination, and we need to figure out a way to deal with that because I don't think that's paranoid anymore. I think that's actual situational awareness. Now let's just go back to this question you asked: is this a fundamental flaw in liberal democracy? And I think that it is. And bear with me. Maybe the fundamental flaw in liberal democracy is believing that the people would never put somebody as malign as this in office. The entire system of government and all of the traditions of the country really were designed to prevent someone like Donald Trump from amassing this much power. The whole idea of separation of powers, checks and balances, a constitution, that constrains the power of government. All of that was part of the American design. And yet the American people decided we're going to put that man in office. And then after he tried to overturn the election and we found out so much about him, they put him back into office. So the fact that so much power has been concentrated in the hands of one man who is now, I think, for all intents and purposes, quite literally above the law. And when I use the word literally, I mean literally with the Supreme Court decision. Donald Trump knows, quite frankly, that he's never going to be impeached. He's immune from criminal liability. He does believe that he can do anything. And the courts are letting him so far. I mean, the Supreme Court and Congress has turned itself into potted plants. So
Hmm.
this this brilliant system of government that we had designed assumed that we would have good, decent people in office, or if we did not, that other good and decent people would check them. So it was an
Yes.
honor.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it turns out it was an honor system. So what happens when the country is run by dishonorable cretins like
Yeah.
Stephen Miller and Donald Trump?
Well, as a lot of the commenters are pointing out too, the founders perhaps naively believed that Congress would be jealously guard their powers and their prerogatives, and they would see the president, even of their own party, as an adversary as opposed
Yeah.
to their boss. But look, there's been other things that happen along the way too. Who knows? The Electoral College once was actually not just a way of apportioning representation or votes, but it was also a way to vet candidates by having elites in local areas who would actually be casting their votes, possibly exercising their own conscience, uh, overriding the passions of the people. Senators used to be um, not elected in a popular vote. That could have been better or worse, but perhaps that would have given them more independence or something or other. Um, I think just even more recently, McCain-Feingold, which probably pretty popular idea, but I think it helps strip the power of political parties to kind of vet candidates. And maybe they could have prevented Trump from taking over the Republican Party. There's like whole lot, and then obviously
Right.
this has nothing to do with anything the founders could have envisioned. But I just think the social media, which Donald Trump certainly utilized, was a game changer for everything in our world. So it took us 250 years to get here, Charlie, but this is the this is exactly what I think the founders were worried about, but obviously couldn't fully prevent us from getting where we are today.
Well, we were in an experiment, but that became a cliche, the American experiment. And I think we forgot that all experiments don't work. That's why that's why we
Yes.
call it an experiment, right? It's not the
Yeah.
American settlement. It's not like America's nailed it. We thought we nailed it, but we're remembering now it's an experiment. By the way, can I just say something about this switching subject? That something you wrote today that caught my eye.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Please, by
okay,
all means.
so this quote you just posted it on Substack right before we started.
Yeah, I can
Quote from
read it if
Christy
you want.
Nomathina. Could you please?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
read this. This is hilarious. This is true. So this was, I guess, an interview with Benny Johnson.
yeah.
This is
Russian
so
asset.
Christy Nome, Homeland Security Secretary, was asked about Bad Bunny performing at the Super Bowl, and she literally said this. She's talking about the NFL. Well, they suck, and we will win, and God will bless us, and we'll stand and be proud of ourselves at the end of the day. And they won't be able to sleep at night because they won't know what they believe, and they're so weak, we'll fix it.
You're talking
That's
about the NFL
he's talking
selecting.
about. Yes.
Okay, so I have a confession for you, Matt.
God will
For the
bless
third time.
us. They won't be able to sleep at night because they picked Bad Bunny, apparently, to be the halftime show.
Yeah, it's always fun to be lectured by a puppy killer, about right and wrong. Okay, but here's my confession: for the third time in 3 days, I read something and I thought that can't be real. That's got to be fake. And sure enough, this grown ass woman who is the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, referring to the NFL's choice of a halftime act, says, "What is it again? They suck." And
And I mean, this would be
well,
the
they
kind
suck
of,
and will win.
and God will bless us, and we'll
Yeah,
stand and be proud of ourselves.
What the hell? But I saw this in an Ann Telna's cartoon, the gospel according to, Christy Nome. And I thought, okay, she's got to have juiced that quote a bit. No, this is the way these people talk. This is the
And they
level
won't
of
be
their
able to
mentality.
sleep. They won't be able to sleep at night. I mean,
Oh
it's
God,
like she's just,
what have we done, Henrietta? What have we done? We have inflicted bad funny on NFL fans. Oh my God, the shame, the horror.
and the credulity too. I mean, this isn't, she's not being ironic or funny. This is in all sincerity. Her response
I
to the
don't.
NFL picking a halftime show she doesn't like. Look, it can't be the Rolling Stones every year. I'm sorry, Christy. Come on.
Well, I mean, and she took time out from attacking Chicago apartment buildings
Yeah.
and zip tying children in the middle of the night to tell somebody else that they won't be sleeping at night. See, the thing about Christy Nome is that she and Corey Lewandowski apparently don't have any problems sleeping at night despite what they do. I did not necessarily say they were together. I'm just saying that these people
But it has
do
been
not seem
reported.
do not, it's been speculated, but these people do not have this requisite level of conscience and shame that I think the founding fathers assumed that people with great power in this country would have. We are dealing with some mouth breathing sociopaths with massive power.
Charlie, think of the how warped he is and how misplaced her emotions are. I mean, literally, she's in charge of this department. Masked federal agents repelled from Black Hawk helicopters onto a roof. They used flash bang grenades, roused citizens from sleep at gunpoint. Children were zip tied. American citizens were handcuffed and detained. Some of them were naked outside for hours. She's not upset about that. In fact, she likes that. You know
No,
what
no.
really pisses her off?
She made a movie about it. Made a
She
video.
made a
What?
film.
Yeah.
But she will draw the line at Bad Bunny. That is what, if you want to get her moral outrage, her indignation, it's not from what happened in Chicago. It's from what is happening in the Super Bowl.
And
Unbelievable.
apparently she's most angry about Bad Bunny because number one, he's criticized Donald Trump, he's criticized ICE, he's Puerto Rican, and he sings in Spanish. Okay, so fucking what? I mean, first of all, can we just put this in context? It's an artist, it's a singer, who's performing a concert at a game, and he's engaged in speech they don't like. In America, speech is still free, particularly when it is a private citizen. And I guess this blurring of the line between, what is the job and the concern of government and what's going on in the private sector, but also, is there any limit to the things that these guys don't feel that they need to weigh in on or that they exercise their power? We're going to punish the NFL for having somebody who's criticized the government. This is the United
Yeah.
States of America. I mean, 10 minutes ago, this would have been shocking, right? I mean,
It's also interesting, too. I could be wrong on this, but I believe that Bad Bunny was supporting Trump until that Tony Hinchcliffe comedian, right before the election, made this cruel joke about Puerto Rico. And then I think Bad Bunny turned against Trump or withdrew his endorsement. I think this is true. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but maybe somebody can fact check me out there. So I don't think he's like reflexively anti-Trump, but I think that he is very proud of his
what if he
heritage
is?
and he doesn't like what ICE is doing. But you can have, that's the problem with what's going on right now in the Trump world. It's like they will tolerate no pushback, no objections, no criticism. You are
Yeah,
out.
remember, they were the free speech people. I mean, here's another one of these ironies of
Yes.
our time. Remember in 2024 when they were going to restore free speech, when Elon Musk says, I'm going to take over Twitter and because I'm a free speech
Yeah.
absolutist.
Yeah.
I mean, what complete rank bullshit that turned out to be, right?
Okay. So speaking of free speech, Charlie, let's change gears here.
No, I swear
Barry
a lot more than
Weiss.
you do.
Barry Weiss of an outlet called the Free Press has taken over. Formerly, she was, I guess, the opinion editor at the New York Times. It was a little too woke for her, so she left and started this outlet that is bankrolled. Is it Peter Thiel? One of those tech guys. But it's. I think critics might say that they're sort of anti-Trump, but I think you could also make a case that she created an outlet that was center right, that their primary pushback was against wokeism. So, but you know, Charlie, I think there's two ways of looking at this story of her taking. There's a lot of ways of looking, but two prime ways of kind of looking at Barry Weiss taking over CBS. One is that Trump is consolidating power. That this is just another example, TikTok, all that. The other way of looking at it would be, look, our whole lives, Charlie, you and I have complained about liberal media bias. I think it's pretty clear that it's one of the things that is actually killing the mainstream media is the half the American public has tuned out. And maybe having a little diversity at a place like CBS would be helpful. I mean, um, this is what we've been working for our whole lives. Finally, one of us makes it into the upper echelon. Um, Let me read you real quick, and
I
then I'll.
wish that was the I wish that was the scenario we were watching.
I think I know where you're going with this. Let me read you what Jonathan V. Last said.
No, don't.
So
No,
the
no, no.
Ellis, you don't want to read this. Let's just say he thinks that the Ellisons believe this will buy them goodwill with Trump. Where are you?
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's the larger picture. I mean, look, I have mixed feelings on Barry Weiss. Here's my unpopular opinion. That I think she's smart. I think that she still has some, legitimate journalistic instincts. But look, this is a big money. This is a big money play. It's a big power play. The Ellisons are part of this larger pattern of, which is again, I mean, I think we need to put this in that this is not about Barry Weiss taking over CBS. This is part of this larger pattern where you have the right-wing billionaires and the oligarchs who are exerting massive control over the media. And are they doing it in order to have more diversity in the media? Or are they doing it in order to curry favor with the government, the regime that you and I just were talking about? Is absolutely intolerant. Now, by the way, how long will this bromance last? How long will look, Trump demands absolute loyalty. He shows loyalty to no one. He is furious that Rupert Murdoch is allowing criticism on Fox. What happens when he turns on Ellison? What happens when he turns on Thiel? What happens? We just don't know. How far are they going to push that? And also, ultimately, the success or failure of a lot of these enterprises depends on what the audience wants and what they'll tolerate. So, you know, what is Barry Weiss going to do as editor in chief of CBS? By the way, can I just make a small comment here? What does the title editor in chief of a news network mean? That's a newspaper title, isn't it? And also,
It is.
she
Yeah.
reports directly to Ellison.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the orders come down, go easy on Trump, that we are now a MAGA outlet and that we have to push, say, this other big lie. What will she do? And I leave that as a question mark. I know how
Hmm.
people are suspicious, but then what does CBS, which is still there, what does it do? And so all of this is to be determined, but I think that we ought to focus on the larger pattern that we're seeing here, this state controlled. Donald Trump would like to believe that he's creating this vast new alternative media of state propaganda. I'm not sure that's the way it will play out, but we'll see.
Well, again, I think I said last week, Charlie, like if you had a checklist of all the things I need to do, people I need to purge or
Mhm.
co opt, institutions and people, this could be part of that checklist, right? I mean, it's one more example
Law,
of how.
law firms, universities, private businesses, the media.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing. Everything that Trump has done has been predictable. What I think has been the shock is realizing that all of these pillars of liberal democracy, all of these civic institutions that you thought would be sort of the bedrocks that would push back, um, proved to be much more fragile and hollow. And I think that it's a legitimate question to say, how did they get so hollowed out? How did they become so weak? And again, yes, if CBS was going to become more balanced, if that was what was going to be happening, um, this would be a good thing. But you know what? They're not putting you and I in charge of CBS. That's not the way it's playing out. And
But
keep in
they're
mind that
also,
Barry Weiss is not going to be calling the shots. Ellison's going to be calling the shots,
yeah,
and Donald Trump thinks that he will tell Ellison what shots to call. So let's watch.
they're not, it's not you or me, but it's also not Tucker Carlson or like I wonder why her, because yes, I think there's some skepticism that's warranted that she could be, part of this MAGA media takeover, but she's not necessarily the first person on my list I would think of if I were looking for that. Do you have any idea why her?
Well, talk about the probably the most dramatic failed cancellation in the history of the media. When the progressives, the New York Times, essentially made life so miserable that she quit. So what has she done since then? And let's give her some credit here. She went and founded a university. She went and founded a website that has $15 million a year in annual revenue. She has created her own media ecosystem. Now, again, does that mean that she can run CBS? Not necessarily, but it's not completely. I mean, look, this was somebody that, back, in the midst of time, like 3 years ago, the left thought that they had exiled, that she was going to disappear, that she was going to be nobody. Look how that worked out.
Yeah. I'm just trying to survive here on Substack. So I'm like
I
impressed
know.
by these people who are entrepreneurial and wildly successful. Man, because it's tough. Like it's just tough just doing like a Substack live. You know what I mean? Like just
No,
getting the
this
getting
is
the
fun.
technology to work.
No,
Oh,
no,
it's
no, no.
fun, but
Here's the deal. You know what I like? And I think people need to understand this. I think the coolest thing about what you and I are doing here on Substack is we're not part of some corporation. You know,
yeah.
like for the first time in my life, I realized, I don't have a boss. I don't have to worry about that. Nobody can fire me. I am not part of this superstructure. To be sort of liberated and untethered, at least for the moment, this is wonderful. We are the luckiest men alive, Matt Lewis.
I like it. Independent journalism. Um, so we're in a shutdown, Charlie. Not you and me. The work here continues. The cause goes on. The struggle
Mm-hmm.
continues for us. But for other
Every day.
people, there's a government shutdown taking place. And one interesting thing happened. You might have seen this last night. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Charlie, put out. I think it was a tweet where she said she is quote disgusted that health insurance premiums will double this year. So she is breaking. Remember, this is the central reason I think that Democrats have landed on for shutting down the government is because they want to negotiate that the Donald Trump would or the Republicans would reinstate the subsidies for the
Yeah,
Affordable
yeah.
Care Act. And here Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying she is, quote, disgusted that premiums are going to double. This isn't the first time that she's sort of taken a stance against Republicans and even
Yeah.
Donald Trump. She did the same thing with the Epstein report. But is this a sign that maybe the Democrats could actually win this shutdown after all?
Okay, wait. I would not rest too much on Marjorie Taylor Greene handing the Democrats a huge victory here. But let's just go with this. There's some real cracks in MAGA that are going on. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is really going through something. I mean, let's be honest about it. There are a lot of figures that we have covered over the last couple of years that really, if you pull back a little bit, they've been going through slow motion nervous breakdowns. So, just keep that in mind. But we're in the process right now of seeing MAGA eating its own. I mean, it is the knives out. And I know you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I mean, Laura Loomer. Did you read that story in the Wall Street Journal? Laura Loomer, who is,
I saw
you know,
one where she's telling Trump, "Do not pardon Ghislaine Maxwell."
well,
Is
and
that
she's
is that the
also
same?
turning against a lot. No, and she's also going after all these other MAGA figures. And she's one of the worst bigoted freaks. The fact that she's even there is absolutely insane. But she's going after a lot of these folks. So again, there's a lot of palace intrigue. There are a lot of egos that are at stake. And I suppose this is what you would get in a lame duck administration. I'm not sure this is a lame duck administration. Um, but there's stuff going on now in terms of the shutdown. Let me bounce something off you.
Okay.
Because the question that I've been asking all along is, and I'm in favor of what the Democrats did. I think they had no alternative. I think they had to. They could not continue to fund Donald Trump's government. But the question that I have is, what's the end game? What's your exit strategy?
Yeah.
Well, what does a win even look like? You know, and I can't come up with one. And so the question is, I
Yeah.
also can't come up with how this ever ends.
This could go.
I
We're on
mean,
like
ever.
this has been what, day 10 now or something. People
Yeah.
don't really. I mean, at some point they're going to have to pass a law, otherwise the military is not going to be funded.
Hmm.
WIC, women and children, women, infants and children is going to not be able
Yeah.
to support people who desperately need it. Like at some point, there are going to be real consequences. So far, it's been like maybe some parks are shut down. Who knows?
Yeah.
Charlie, I have to say, I don't think that there is an exit strategy in terms of winning the shutdown. I think you declare victory, though, at least internally, if you change the subject to healthcare. And if you lay down the marker that Republicans are taking away, or they're going to double the cost of your health care, and it's going to start showing up, and you're going to see it soon, and the Democrats are trying to save it. In fact, they were willing to shut down the government to try to save it. And here we have, I think this is interesting. I don't think this is so much a sign of Trump being a lame duck. I think it's a sign that he put together this very disparate coalition that is, in some cases, almost like mutually exclusive, or at least it ought to be.
Okay,
And
fair.
intellectually, it is, right?
Mhm.
And so, what Marjorie Taylor Greene is espousing is very consistent with a Steve Bannon
A
philosophy.
populist approach, right?
Exactly. Like, we are the Volk. The Volk. We need to take care. They're fine with big government spending and even like socialism. They're fine with that. Take care of our own, take care of our people. In fact, if we want to make sure that Republicans stay in power, let's use money to buy off votes. Like, they're very cool with that. Now, this flies in the face of the Club for Growth, free market, conservative orthodoxy. But Charlie, the reason I find this interesting, and the reason I think there's a chance it actually could play out in the shutdown, is I don't think Donald Trump is wedded to a conservative free
Oh no.
market
Oh,
orthodoxy. So
absolutely not. No.
what if he actually says the sneakiest, smartest thing we could do would be give the Democrats what they want today?
Okay. You tried
I
that
tried to
last
bait
week.
you last week.
Oh, okay, but you know what? I have been thinking about it because that's completely conceivable. And then the question is, then Democrats are kind of stuck, right? You know, you shut down the
Right.
government because you want these subsidies for healthcare. You get them. Donald Trump's okay. You know what? You get them, and now a Democrat's going to go in and say, okay, now we're going to refund the government that has just declared the Insurrection Act. Part of the problem is that we're talking about this in conventional terms. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are conventional politicians
Yep.
dealing with politics as if it is a normal compromise, give and take. And these are not conventional times. The entire discussion we've had is like, holy shit, what's happening to, constitutional government? So do Democrats then go, okay, if we get these subsidies, then all right, let's go back to funding government as normal. They're going to claim it's a victory. I think most people are going to go, oh, you caved, and this existential threat you've been warning us about, apparently not. This was the inherent conviction, right? That
Yeah.
on the one hand, you say, this is this, existential threat to our constitutional order. We cannot allow this to go on. On the other hand, if you give us these subsidies, we're okay. You can't.
Yeah.
You
I
know what I'm
don't
saying?
think this is going to happen, but it would almost be like the Democrats would be the dog that caught the bus, or the dog that caught the car,
Yeah,
whatever the expression is,
there's a
right?
little bit about that. But again, I think that we have just bigger issues going on right now. I guess I've always, what in the past watched these shutdowns and figured it's like this elaborate kabuki dance that eventually it will get resolved. I'm not as confident they're going to resolve it without real damage right now, but it's damage within the context of, oh my God, it's raining meteors of death all around us. Um, we can't deal with this as if suddenly it's like 1995 negotiations between Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. It's just like, no,
Right.
it's not like that.
Uh, you want to take a couple questions before we call it a day?
Absolutely.
Okay,
You got, you
we're gonna
got, you got some
try.
answers. You
We're
still
gonna
have
try
some opinions
this.
left. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna don the glasses here. So if you have a question, let's go now. Why haven't the Dems run? Speaker Mike Johnson has run unopposed his whole career in Congress. I didn't know that was true. Why haven't the Dems run against him? I assume it's a safe district in Louisiana, but you tell me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a school of thought that says you run everywhere, you oppose everybody, you make them spend money. The other school of thought is, the charge of the Light Brigade was not considered a military victory. Why waste money on races that you can't win? My caution, by the way, not answering that question, but is Democrats every single cycle, you fall in love with some hot candidate, in a district that, they will raise 50, 80 million dollars when they have zero chance of win. Do not piss away your money on races that you can't win. There are seats that are the majority makers, and then there are the ones, quite frankly, that have been gerrymandered out of reach. So reality check. I don't know. You
Are
got
there
a
any
better answer?
Are there any Dems like there's the guy down in Texas,
Yeah.
Talarico? There's
Oh, yeah.
Mallory something or other in Michigan. Are there any Dems that you think are exciting right now?
Well, I want to see what Abigail Spanberger does in in Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're not talking about Governor Bashir more, the Democratic governor of Kentucky right now. But I think that the problem is that Democrats fall in love with candidates who could not win in swing districts. And I'm sorry to break this to folks that look, Mamdani is going to win in New York, and the progressives are going to do the happy dance. So are Republicans. The Democratic Socialist of America candidate would not win anywhere else other than in New York City. So be careful what you wish for. So instead of getting all jiggy about these far left candidates in overwhelmingly Democratic areas, you should start talking about the people who win elections in places like Michigan, in Pennsylvania, and in Virginia, and in Nevada, and in Arizona, and in Wisconsin. You can win in those areas. And by the way, at some point, we need to keep an eye on what's going on in New Jersey. If Democrats
Yes.
lose the governor's election in New Jersey, it will be disastrous on one level, but maybe a really hard slap in the face to stop, chuffing the hopium about where we're at right now.
Um, will the newly elected representative from Arizona ever be seated? That's a question we got.
Yes, but it's a great question because you want to talk about the assholery of Mike Johnson delaying swearing in the new Democratic representative from Arizona because she is the 218th signature on the discharge petitions for the Epstein files. These guys
Yes.
are so, and I think you need to keep asking that question. Why are they working so hard to cover up what is in those files? I don't know what's in those files, but man, when you refuse to actually seat a duly elected representative because you do not want to have a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And by the way, you saw that Donald Trump seems to be kind of open to that whole Ghislaine Maxwell pardon thing.
Ah,
Mm,
scary. Yeah.
That's going to go great.
Um, and there was just a Supreme Court ruling that her appeal was denied or something.
Yeah,
So this is, yeah.
you get
What
that
do you think of
pardon.
David? What do you think of David Jolly running? Was he running for governor of Florida?
Yeah,
He used
I
to be a
like David.
regular on your pod, right?
Yeah, I like Dave. David's a good friend. David's quality guy. Former Republican representative who courageously broke with his party, became Never Trump. Has been on MSNBC, has been on our pod. He is a smart, decent guy. It'll be interesting to know how that plays out. In Florida, you've had former Republicans run as Democrats. It has not worked out for them. But Godspeed. Godspeed.
Someone wants to know, will Trump pardon Diddy? He Diddy. Who just got, what, 4 years? It's a slap on the wrist, I think.
So I don't know. I don't know. But did you see what Tara Palmieri speculated about? And she is like the go-to reporter on the whole Epstein case. And he thinks that what Trump will do is he'll bundle together a bunch of pardons for, say, Diddy and Ghislaine Maxwell, and he threw in somebody else's horrible's name, and just throw them out and hope that somehow the Epstein thing gets lost in the chat. I do not
Wow.
know. Yeah. Wow.
You can't put anything past him. And again, look, the
No.
founders, this is one that this is the president has sole discretion over pardons. I think that's a bad idea, personally. I think
Yeah,
there should
George
be a
Mason tried to warn them against it.
yep, yep.
George
He
Mason
was
said,
right.
really bad idea. And you know what? They assured him, don't worry, George. We got this. There are these checks and
Right.
balances and
Someone wants to know why Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries won't back Mamdani in New York.
because he's going to be toxic nationally. I mean, and I'm sorry, the Democratic Socialists of America are not like Democratic Socialists in Denmark and Sweden. You need to go back and see some of this. You want to talk about ideological baggage, about law enforcement, about a variety of things. Look, if you are Donald Trump, you're the Republicans, you want to paint Democrats as far left extremists and socialists. And now you're all going, why does the Democratic Party not fully embrace a guy who's far left and describes himself as a socialist? So, I don't think this.
Someone asked if we could say so. It's been very negative. They want something positive. I'm reminded of the Woody Allen quote where he said, "I don't have anything positive to say. Would you settle for too negative?" But I will throw it out to you, Charlie. Do you have something positive, something happy that you're happy about today?
Yes, Jane Goodall's last words, famous last words. Did you see this? One of the most wonderful women in the
Was
world.
it anti-Trump? Was it anti-Trump?
She was asked, "Is there anybody you don't like? Because you're like the nicest person on the planet." She said, "Absolutely. And I would like to put them on one of Musk's spaceships and send them all off to a planet he's going to discover." And you can imagine who I'd put on that spaceship, along with Musk, would be Trump and some of Trump's real supporters. And then I would put Putin in there. I would put President Xi, and I'd certainly put Netanyahu. Put them all on that spaceship and send them off. I think I'm going to write in my newsletter. Now, I'd add a few more passengers, and I would probably specify a slightly different destination, but from Jane Goodall's lips to God's ear.
I love it. That would be a good place to end, but I got one more and then we'll get out of here. Somebody asked, said, we're all trying to do the best we can. We all want to help. What can we do? You're out there watching this, listening to this, and you want to make a difference for America. What can you do?
Well, spread the word, and quite frankly, I think there needs to be a big turnout for the next No Kings rally. I usually don't say this kind of thing, but I think that people need to show up, because one of the things that authoritarian governments really want to do is they want to demoralize you and they want to make you think that you are smaller than you are. I think that if millions of people turn out and you look around, you go, you know what? Not only are we not the crazy ones, but we are not alone. And that, that these folks, the Christine Nones and the Stephen Millers and the Donald Trumps, they do not speak for America. I think that would be a start.
So, man, I would love to hear from everybody out there. Are you cool with the 10 a.m. start time? Is it too early to do Sykes and Lewis? Do you like us taking the questions? Obviously, I would encourage everyone to support independent media and to follow us on Substack if you're not doing so already. Any final thoughts, Charlie Sykes?
No, we'll do this again next week. What do you think, Matt?
I think this was fun. I think we're getting better each week. So we got to keep it going. The question is,
we have a lot of room to grow. I mean, we have not peaked yet.
No.
Not at all. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Appreciate
See you guys.
All right.
Thanks.
See you next week.
See you, Charlie.
Okay, bye-bye.